I kept a garden journal all season and 7 things stood out. And these are the kinds of lessons that you don't notice in the moment, but when you do, they change how you grow. Hi, it's Steph. Welcome back to my channel. These are 7 observations that I made in my own garden as the growing season went on. It's not a list that I found on the internet, but I want to share these with you because I feel that as we go through, you'll be able to relate to some or maybe most of them. And starting with number 1, never say never. I used to say I'd never drive a minivan, and here I am absolutely in love with my minivan. I've had it for 12 years, my kids are grown, and I still won't get rid of it because that thing can haul a lot of plants. And I had a similar shift in my garden this year where I came to the realization that I do like warm colored plants, specifically in my containers. Now, if you've been around for any number of seasons here on my channel, you know that I tend to lean towards cooler color palettes in my garden. Purples, pinks, whites, and even as of recent, soft yellows. But last season, I tested a few warm colors in my containers like reds, some oranges, and deep colored foliage, and I absolutely loved it. So I would say that I'm starting to shift a little bit towards also enjoying warmer colors. Now, I don't know that I'm ready to put them in my garden yet with perennials and such, but with annuals, it's been a lot of fun. I had some really beautiful containers, and as the season ended, I started to realize how much I enjoyed that color palette in my containers this season. In fact, I had visited someone, and in front of their home, there were a few containers with even more warm colored oranges and reds, and I actually took footage of them as inspiration for some containers that I'm going to create in the 2026 season. So I would say never say never. Even if you don't like a specific color palette in your garden, your tastes will evolve over time, and you might find that you like something that you never thought you would. Number 2, you don't know unless you try. Using annuals in my borders was something I wasn't entirely sure about at first. Mostly because I've always relied on my perennials. They're easy and old faithful in the garden. You plant them once and they come back year after year to fill in your garden. The thing with perennials is that most only bloom for a short time, and this can often lead to lulls in the garden, where you have gaps of color throughout the season. And the growing season can also be so short for so many of us that we want continual color to enjoy for as long as possible. You can do this by consistently adding and layering perennials that bloom at different times, which is something I do myself and talk about quite a bit here on my channel. But I had a light bulb moment in the last couple of seasons that those gaps in the garden are such great opportunities to add color with annuals and to experiment with different annuals. So annuals bloom their heads off the whole season compared to the perennials that show up for a couple of weeks, do their thing, and then they're gone. And while I have done some of this in the past years with Blue Horizon, Ageratum, Gomphrena, and Zahara double raspberry zinnias, this year I especially enjoyed adding annuals in my patio bed. And while annuals are typically thought of as plants that you just use in containers, they are amazing in borders and flower beds. So go ahead and give it a shot. You don't know until you try. It ended up being one of my favorite parts of the season. And before we get into number 3, I want to quickly thank today's sponsor, City Beauty. And I had a lot of fun filming this one. It filled some of those teenage aspirations of being a TV model on a skincare or makeup commercial. So I hope that you enjoy it. With the cold weather and the heat running nonstop, my skin always feels drier at this time of year. So I keep my routine simple and focus on a few products that actually help. Lately, I've been using 3 things from City Beauty: the Line Smoothing Hydro Mask, the Lip Fix Plus Bundle, and the Beyond Mascara. I use the Line Smoothing Hydro Mask about once a week when my skin feels dry or tired. It's very hydrating and soothing, and my skin always looks smoother afterwards, especially in the winter. For everyday makeup, I've been using the Beyond Mascara. It makes my lashes look fuller and more defined while also nourishing them, which I really appreciate. Even on minimal makeup days, mascara helps me feel more put together. Dry lips are also a big issue for me this time of year, and the Lip Fix Plus Bundle has made a noticeable difference. The City Lips Plumping Gloss adds hydration and comfort, and the Line Therapy helps smooth the look of fine lines, while the Night Oil helps keep my lips hydrated overnight. Lip liner and lipstick apply so much better when my lips feel smooth. City Beauty products are science-backed, cruelty-free, and designed to deliver real results without a complicated routine, and with a focus on helping women feel confident and radiant at every stage of life. Try City Beauty for yourself by scanning the QR code on the screen or using the link below. And don't forget to use the promo code Hooked and Rooted for 20% off your purchase. And thank you to City Beauty for sponsoring today's video. Number 3, different isn't always better. One thing that I noticed is that I really missed having my gomphrena growing in my main walkway border this year. I did grow them and I planted them, but they just didn't thrive because they were being crowded out by the vigor of the Suncredible sunflowers that I grew in that area as well. Now, this was the first time that I planted more than one annual together in that space, and the reason I planted those sunflowers this year is because they start blooming earlier than the gomphrena, which usually picks up size in mid to late summer and goes all the way through the fall. But the sunflowers never slowed down enough to give that gomphrena a chance to really take off. It was being shaded and it just didn't do well. I do love to try new plants, but there's some things that really earn their place in the garden. And I've designated my front walkway border as my favorite spot for gomphrena. I can try different varieties each year if I get bored, but so far I've really liked the Atomic Purple, but I am going to try a new one this year. I just love the way that it spills over the edge of my walkway as they grow and as the season goes on. I also determined that I love growing the low-growing varieties of zinnias in front of my driveway entrance walls. They're smaller, they're bushier, and they just fit that space so well. I specifically like the Zahara Double Raspberry Ripple Zinnia, which is a gorgeous shade of pink and white. It has a striping effect. Really beautiful. Growing from seed allows you to try different varieties that you may not always find sold as plants, so the options are near endless, which is a lot of fun. And I've loved discovering the new plant varieties to grow from seed that are now staples for me. Some examples are the Dusty Miller New Look, which is a gorgeous foliage plant that's cold weather hardy and so easy to grow from seed, and the beautiful Sahara Rudbeckia with these gorgeous shades of sunset colors. Yeah, there are tons of plants I could try, but sometimes the ones you've grown a bunch of times and have performed well for you are just the way to go. Different isn't always better. And number 4, too much of a good thing might be too much. I like having a lot of containers, but as the season went on, I realized how much time they required, especially when it comes to watering and fertilizing. It's helped me think more intentionally about how many containers I create going forward and how I can streamline watering. It usually takes me about 2 hours each evening, and honestly, when it comes to watering or weeding, I prefer weeding, so it just wasn't something that was enjoyable for me after a little while. Adding a couple of self-watering reservoirs to my driveway containers helped. I used the Aquapots by Proven Winners, but the thing I had to learn with those was that once you add your plants to it, you have to wait until those plants grow large enough roots to be able to sop up the water from that reservoir. So it took a few weeks for that to happen, but once it did, all I had to do was fill those self-watering reservoirs once a week for the entire season, and they were pretty much on their own, which was wonderful. In the upcoming season, I'm considering some drip irrigation for containers, which is not something I've ever done before. And the reason for that was logistics, how far away my containers are from a water source, and having to run tubing for long stretches, etc. So in my case, I have to figure out how to scale back on containers and how to facilitate watering to make things a little bit easier and more enjoyable again. But in your case, there might be something else that's taking too much of your time, and it's time to reconsider how to make that a bit easier as well. And number 5, sometimes the smallest projects make the biggest impact. This past growing season, George and I changed out a small fountain that was solar powered that we had in our patio bed to a larger, more grand fountain, because over time, the smaller fountain that we had become kind of hidden by all of the plants that had grown around it. And I say small because this was a project that we were able to do in a weekend. One day we created a small concrete base, and the next day we assembled the fountain and had it running. And I can't tell you how many times this season I have enjoyed seeing the birds come to this fountain, listening to that sound of water that is just so soothing, and just catching a view that caught me off guard about how beautiful that space looks now. So the taller, larger fountain really made such an impact. And again, for such a small scale project in terms of a time investment, it was so worth it. So if there's something small in your own garden that you've been considering for a while, try giving it a go this season. I'm sure that you'll be glad you did. Number 6, it's okay to move on from things that no longer work. I've made the realization in this past growing season that dahlias do not fit my current season of life. Dahlias are beautiful, but taking a break from them feels like the right decision for me, at least for now. In my growing zone, they require digging up for the winter, storing them, and replanting them each spring, which is really time consuming. And between having a family, a household to run, garden maintenance, a job, and a YouTube channel, it just became something I didn't have enough time to dedicate to. So this season in particular, my raised bed garden area became overgrown and out of control. And it's something I felt a lot of guilt around. Not being able to go down there as much as I had hoped to cut on my flowers. It felt like a waste of effort to store and plant those tubers. In other growing seasons, I've realized that daylilies weren't the right fit for me in my garden. I had to keep spraying the buds so that the deer wouldn't eat them, and once they were done blooming, the foliage looked really unsightly. So I ended up digging them up and rehoming those. And just last year in 2024, I did the same thing with hostas after the deer kept eating them, and it was like I put out a deer salad bar. Our time is so valuable and we only have so much of it. And each year in our gardens, if we take the time to notice, we'll find things that are no longer worth our time and energy. Dahlias, it's not you, it's me. Maybe we'll see each other again in the future. So if you have something in your garden that's causing you a little bit of grief and maybe a little too much work, maybe it's time to reevaluate. Number 7, not everything has to happen every year. This season, I didn't order any bulbs, and at first I felt like it was something that I missed. But then I started thinking about how many bulbs I've added over the years that are already out there in the garden, and most of them will come back this spring. And gardens are built season by season. The work that you put in really does compound over time, just like interest. So when the spring arrives, there'll still be plenty of beautiful blooms to enjoy. There's also been years where I didn't get to mulching. Sure, a fresh layer of mulch really sets off our plants beautifully and it helps with weed suppression and moisture retention, but it's also really labor intensive. And some years we just don't have the time and energy for it. And more I've come to terms with it's okay, not everything has to happen every year. If there's one thing that this season reminded me of, it's that we're always constantly adjusting what we grow, what we let go of, and what we carry forward. And I imagine many of you are feeling this way as well. So thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.